This is the origin story of Optimus Prime.
Aren't you tired of being looked down on? I got a feeling that everything's gonna change.
No!
4 friends will become heroes.
So that's new.
From the director of Toy Story 4,
We are more than meets the eye.
and one of the minds that brought you Inside Out.
Everyone ready? 1, 2,
Transformers 1. Rated PG, September 20th.
Mike Seibert Radio. We're about to start the show. We talk about stuff and things. Lots of guests, in-depth interviewing. Mike Seibert Radio. It's nobody's favorite show. Movies, comics, video games, and TV. And we also can guarantee that it's not gonna be that funny. But that's okay because the show is free. So crank the volume in your headphones. The podcast at last is starting. It's time for Mike Seibert Radio.
Well, hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of Mike Seibert Radio. I am your host, and this is it. The review embargo has lifted like a weight over the Transformers content community's shoulders, and we can now talk freely in more review in depth about Transformers 1. And this podcast is a sequel of sorts. You can get my white hot scorching takes fresh from seeing an advanced screening with the gang from Seibert Northwest in the episode that precedes that. In this episode, I'm going to go a little more in depth as opposed to just kind of reactions and vibes. I'm sure there will be some material that overlaps and repeats. As I kind of talk about how I feel about this movie that I have decided that I love quite a lot. It has remained rent-free in my head since I've seen it. I can't wait to see it again. As of this recording, as the embargo has lifted, I have not had the opportunity to see it a second time, but I am hoping to catch one of the fan events coming up. And certainly will see it most likely a third time around the time that the movie comes out. I really like it. And the more I think about it, even the act of recording this and looking over my notes and kind of getting things consolidated kind of gets that juice up a little bit. And I haven't felt this way about a Transformers movie in a really long time. And it was kind of interesting. I had a conversation with my buddy Chandler, who came with me to the fan event screening that we saw in late August. And I had said something about Rise of the Beasts, and I just kind of gave the typical Mike Seibert shrug, it's fine. And I had not realized how much I had cooled on that movie in the year since it came out, because I was pretty high on it at the time. Did a number of podcast appearances and a number of episodes of Mike Seibert Radio where we talked about it, and I was generally enthusiastic about it. But the thing that I realized a year later is that it doesn't stick with me. Like I haven't really felt the urge to go revisit it. Whereas with Transformers 1 here, I can't wait to see it again. And it's cliched, and you're probably waiting for me to say this as you know, you're a fan of me and a fan of my podcast and know my work. This does make me feel kind of the same way that Transformers the movie did back in 1986, and specifically during the times when it was scarce, like when I was a kid and would get it rented for me on my birthday or special occasions or things like that, where I just didn't have it like at my fingertips and could just watch it anytime I want. I'm kind of in that same headspace with regards to Transformers 1 because I want to watch it again, and I'm currently not able to. So instead, maybe I'll just talk about it with you, and maybe that will help reinvigorate my enthusiasm for it here. So briefly, I mean, obviously, up top, I like it. It is I would say the best Transformers movie of them all, including the Transformers the movie from 1986, which I have said even before I was involved in Transformers fandom. There was a time when I was new on Twitter and podcasting and doing radio, where it was almost kind of like something that was unique to me, where I would get onto film Twitter and talk about Orson Welles being in Transformers the movie and saying that like Transformers the movie is my favorite movie. And that is a statement that is still unshakable. Transformers the movie is my favorite movie, regardless. And it was funny, I've talked about this before, but like when I started interacting with the larger Transformers fandom, I was like, oh yeah, my favorite thing about Transformers is that Transformers the movie. And the response I got was like, well, duh, we all kind of like it. And I've since learned that being part of the fandom, there are folks that, say it's overrated or they don't get it. It's a generational thing. I understand and appreciate that Transformers the movie is a thing of its time, and a lot of my affection and nostalgia for it comes from where I was at my life. I was 7 years old when I saw it in the movie theater, and it left an impression on me that still sticks with me today. The movie has since gone on to have other deeper meaning for me, because now I see it as like a symbol, a totem, a representation of friendships that I've cultivated as a middle-aged, older adult person. Connecting with friends my own age and beyond, and as well as folks that don't look like me. But this isn't necessarily about Transformers fandom. But I guess the thing I have to say up top is my nostalgia and affection and love for the Transformers the movie 1986 is unshakable. There is nothing in my lifetime that will knock that off. Now, that being said, I can very confidently say that Transformers 1 is the best Transformers movie, and I use best in both objective and subjective terms, because this is the one movie, Transformers movie, that feels like it is completely and totally and utterly without compromise. There's no asterisk. Like, I like Transformers the movie, but man, it's a series of music videos, and it's loud, and it's full of animation errors, and the story is barely coherent, and it's a crass consumerism and cashing in on the cynicism of Reagan's 80s and buy more toys and all that. I mean, there's a number of things that I can say about the Transformers, the movie, that is in a negative. And the thing that I will also say is the Transformers, the movie, is many things to many people, but the one thing that it isn't to anybody is approachable or accessible. You would have to have the same experience that I had of growing with these characters and stories for the previous 2 years in the making, to have a functional understanding of what's going on. Transformers 1 doesn't have any of that. You can walk into it completely blind and completely clean, and be in a good spot. Conversely, the same thing with the live action movies. I think I said in my reaction, just vibes, not a review. Please don't call it a review. I don't want Mr. Paramount or John Hasbro to think that I was trying to break embargo by putting up a reaction instead of a review. But I had said then that post Transformers 1 in this new continuity, apparently it's supposed to be the first of a trilogy, which I'm totally fine with. I like the trajectory that the story is going and the groundwork that they've laid. I posited that, do we even need live action movies anymore? And that may have been too far of a reach because we still have the Transformers and G.I. Joe crossover movie that younger kids in the fandom, Transformers fandom, will tell you that we don't need. I'm absolutely looking forward to it as a fan of both franchises, but that also might not be here or there. I do like the idea of perhaps a live action continuity existing side by side in this new animated continuity. I've seen a lot of discourse from salty G1ers, a lot of folks who look like me. They're complaining about the aesthetic of Transformers 1, saying that it looks, childish and for kids. And for me, 40 years into this franchise, I'm like, duh. I think as we have grown with this franchise, in a lot of ways, when the franchise has grown with us, we kind of forget what the mission statement is. It's to sell toys to children. Anything Transformers media related, be it comic books or fiction or movies or TV shows or whatever, it's all a vessel to sell toys to children. Now, Hasbro is glad to take our money as well and to service us as an audience as well. Obviously, they've acknowledged the adult collectors and the quote unquote kidult market, but at the end of the day, Transformers is a IP, a children's property for children. So when people bristle at that, I always kind of roll my eyes. It's like I feel like Hasbro's relationship with us, the older fans, is like, we're glad you're here, but this is what we're shooting for. And I feel like Transformers 1 reinforces that and reinstates that. So before I go on to deeper, more esoteric tangents, I would like to, briefly recap, because every podcast is somebody's first podcast, and you may not have heard my previous episode where I kind of talked about some of my reactions coming out of seeing a very early screening of the movie. But kind of in a nutshell, going through very non-spoilers in this portion of the review, it's this is something special. And I really feel like Paramount and Hasbro has something here, and they know it. Look at the marketing. Look at the amount of advanced screenings. Look at the amount of fan outreach. Like, it feels to me that Paramount is going out of its way to make sure that people see this movie and that they have the opportunities to see that. So I think it's something special, and I hope it does well, and I hope that we as a fandom universally embrace it. It is a new beginning for fans, both old and new. Transformers for me hasn't felt this fresh in a while, in that, like, it's totally approachable. If you know the basic concepts of Transformers, cool. If you don't, this movie gives you everything you need. I love that they called it Transformers 1, because it's literally part 1. And unlike the Star Wars prequels where they call it episode 1, but they refer to things that's 3 movies and 30 years in the past, the theme that I talk about a lot, and will continue to talk about, is approachability and accessibility. And again, Transformers 1 is one of those. This is the freshest, cleanest, most tidy, neatest, most approachable entry point for Transformers, I think that has ever been. Because I'm trying to think of everything that's happened, from like the Marvel comics to the Sunbow cartoon to everything that came out later. It's like, I think every iteration aside from those very first things, and even then, those I think G1 just kind of throws you in to the deep end of the pool and kind of makes you kind of find your own way. I don't know. I would have to think about that further, because that just sprang into my head as I'm talking to you now. But like using Spike as a POV character in the cartoon kind of helps to introduce the concept of Earthbound Transformers. But the thing about Transformers 1 is that it takes it about as far back into the beginning as you go. I mean, apparently this is like 4 billion years before anything else. And it's very early origins to where you can call this a new beginning. And again, it's fresh, neat, and clean for everybody. It's approachable, it's dynamic, it's fun. It's a celebration of 40 years of the Transformers franchise, but it's also unburdened, and pardon the timely phrasing, but it's unburdened by those 40 years of continuity. It celebrates the continuity, but it's also unburdened by it. It's approachable, it's accessible, and more than that, it is a breath of fresh air. My good buddy Anthony Brucali, TFU.info, had said when he went to one of these advanced screenings, ironically enough, on the same night I did, told the studio rep that this is the movie he's been waiting 40 years for. And I agree with that, and I have a twist on that as well. This is the movie that I have been waiting for 7-year-olds to experience in a theater, for them to feel the same way that I did in 1986 watching the Transformers the movie when I was 7 years old. It's fun, it's fast, it's a breathtaking roller coaster. You've never seen a Transformers movie like this, just in terms of way the robots move, the way they interact, the way that Cybertron is depicted, with techno-organic life forms and, flora and fauna, and a lot of things that have been brought in from so many other iterations of the franchise before. Again, this is the one that we've been waiting for, and it makes us wonder if we've outgrown live action. And I dropped the thread earlier when I was talking about the live action Michael Bay movies. Those obviously have their place in time as well, just like Transformers the movie 1986. But there was a part of me, even from like 2007 on, that was kind of sad that the edgier PG-13 sensibilities would be what a lot of kids are experiencing for the first time with Transformers, because every iteration is somebody's G1. And again, I'm so grateful that this now Transformers 1 gets to be other people's G1. But the live action movies feel like they were made for, well, honestly, 13-year-olds. And I feel like Transformers 1 is made for a little bit of everybody. I was talking to a contest winner who had won tickets to an advanced screening of Transformers 1, and she was taking her kids. And I had asked her, I was like, "Oh, if you don't mind my asking, what are the ages? How old are your boys?" And she tells me 7, 11, and 18. I'm like, oh man, you guys are going to have a great time at the movies, because there is a little bit of everything for everybody in that age group. There's a perception and a misconception that isn't entirely incorrect that Transformers 1 is for kids. It absolutely is. But the comparisons to, like, say, like the DreamWorks Robots movie, I don't think are entirely accurate. I'll talk about director Josh Cooley in just a little bit. I did a little bit of research, and the more I look into this dude, the more I like and appreciate, and I feel like that this is a absolute win for him and his team. The engine that makes it go, though, is its heart and its real soul. Like these characters are real, and they have very real interactions and emotions and depth. A lot of it is brought to life in the performances. Even more of it is brought to life in the animation. But it's by contrast with the live action movies. And again, don't mistake that I'm a Bay hater. I am, but I have also, especially through my friendship and collaboration with Michael Andrews as we do Two Mikes Too Furious, I over the last maybe 10 years, maybe 7 years, I've grown an appreciation for the live action franchise that I didn't have previously. It's like, okay, well that gets us in the door and that's fine, but it's crass, it's vaguely racist, it's loud, it's obnoxious, but it has that early teen sensibility that, as I've personally gotten older, sits well with me less and less. I've really cooled on those live action movies, but I also appreciate that they are an important cornerstone of the franchise, and that they do mean as much to their staunchest fans as that 86 movie means to me. So I do have to, I acknowledge that I have to be careful with my criticism of the live action movies, but the thing that they aren't is approachable. And mostly it's through the content. The content is, in my opinion, too abrasive and too harsh and too mature, for lack of a better term, for younger kids. Like I think you need to be 13 to watch those movies. Not so much the case with Transformers 1, but it's in those movies, the Transformers are set pieces. They're not characters, they're special effects. And even though they are given voice performances, especially like by the great Peter Cullen and even like Hugo Weaving as Megatron, and then later Frank Welker and all of that other stuff, the Transformers never feel like they aren't just visual effects, even in their own movie. It never really feels like it's about them. And there's a hollowness to that, a soullessness that never sat right with me. So when we get to Transformers 1 here, where it being just a full-throated animated movie, it feels like everything is designed the way that it ought to be. So the characters are real. They have actual character development. It's emotional. There's a driving narrative. There's an emotional impact. I wrote in my old notes, the movie will tear your damn heart out at times, but it's also fun and it's funny. I mean, you can see that we're in a renaissance of sorts. And you have, or maybe it's more like a revolution of a type, where you've got like the Spider-Verse movies, or even Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem. You know, those kinds of movies, they're kind of like redefining what you can do in computer animation. And I feel that while Transformers 1 isn't as stylistically unique as those projects, it definitely pushes the envelope further than I think I would have expected based on the trailers. The trailers, while I will not say are they do kind of underplay what the movie is in terms of like depth and soul and detail. One of the things that really struck me was the amount of detail crammed into every frame. But even more than that, I mean, aside from like Easter eggs and things like that, but like the thing that really gobsmacked me was the depth of the pigment of the paint on the robots. Like you could tell that like some of like the texturing and coloring was inspired directly from, car paint, automotive paint. Like there are times when you are looking at the Transformers, the robots, and you could see like the not just the glitter, not just the metallic flecks, but also like the sheen of clear coat on top. Like, and it's just, smooth and gorgeous, and just details like that just really kind of surprised me. But with that approachable style, because again, it's clean and approachable and accessible, I feel like that's kind of reinvigorating for Transformers for mainstream consumption. Like this movie is incredibly palatable, I think I would say about that. And between the story, the performances, the depth of the emotion, and of course the Easter eggs, which quite frankly, I need some of the other icons in the fandom to do some of the homework for me, because like I spent a lot of the time pointing at the screen, and there was a lot of whispering and applause in the audience, but unfortunately, one thing you won't get in this podcast is a comprehensive rundown of all of the Easter eggs. I'm thinking perhaps maybe after the movie comes out in another couple weeks, maybe I'll do some kind of live stream or some other type of podcast with some of my friends, and we could talk about some of those things. So really, here what this discussion is just kind of more vibes and reactions, and some details and some stuff that I think I could kind of speak in a little more detail than I did in my initial reaction. But Transformers 1 reminds us why we love Transformers. It's beautiful. It's perfect. I'm sure there are flaws and problems. The plot is basic, but I think that's actually to its strength and not a criticism. It's incredibly easy to follow. You don't feel lost. And at an hour and 44 minutes, you don't feel bombarded and numbed in a way that the live action movies leave you feeling, nor do you feel that you've just come off of a 1980s cocaine high, like experiencing Transformers the movie 1986. So I'll say it here now again. The movie rules. I support it enthusiastically. Go see it. Pay to go see it. Tell your friends to go see it. Get a crew and go see it. My next viewing, I am hoping, crossing my fingers, I will have the opportunity to see it in IMAX 3D. Here in Seattle, we have the Pacific Science Center, home to the largest movie screen in the state. I forget what the dimensions are off the top of my head, but it's something like 90 feet by 62 feet or some such like that. It's the biggest screen in the state, and it is true IMAX because it's the Seattle Center, or it's a Science Center, more accurately. And that's I can't think of a better way to be able to experience that movie again in the most premium format that I can find. And as I said, I mean, maybe I'll be able to see it a third time as well. So that's, I don't know. I guess we'll just call this half of the podcast kind of like a non-spoiler review. I feel like I just kind of repeated a lot of stuff and just kind of like recapped some of the things from my reactions. So I think from this point forward, while I'm still going to talk in those same vague terms, so, hey, Mike, who is this movie for? Well, this movie is for everybody. Hey, Mike, who is this podcast for? And I think that's what I've been kind of struggling with as I've been kind of trying to work on this episode, because I know the folks that are most eager to hear from me are folks that have already seen the movie, but it's a weird struggle because, you know, this is September 12th. The movie still doesn't come out for another week. So do I go full spoilers and talk about like the big plot beats? I don't think I necessarily need to do that. I mean, like there's the spoilers come from Easter eggs and the big plot twists of which there are a couple. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, I mean, from this point forward, I should probably play a commercial or something.
Hello, I'm Chris Hemsworth, and I'm here with Brian Tyree Henry and Keegan Michael Key from the upcoming film Transformers 1.
Enjoy our epic action-packed adventure on the big screen.
Grab your friends and roll out to your local theater. Tickets are on sale now.
See you at the movies.
Come on.
We gotta go.
On September 20th, you can witness the origin of the Transformers.
We roll out.
What?
Transform and roll out!
One will protect.
I want to build a better world.
One will destroy.
We take what's ours.
He's a little intense.
What happened?
My best friend.
Decepticons, rise up!
Transformers 1.
Awesome!
Rated PG. Only in theaters September 20th.
To demark that we're going to be talking about spoilers, but I do want to share a couple things, and I want to talk about the cast, and I want to talk about the director Josh Cooley, and I think through those conversations that will accidentally drip into spoiler territory. But the thing I'm not going to do in this particular episode is recap the movie in full. So this is your spoiler warning. Again, I should probably play some kind of siren or something just to indicate from this point forward, if you are still listening and you are accidentally spoiled by something that I mention about the movie, sorry. And if you are here for a full deep dive on the movie, I will do some of the best that I can, and we'll just we'll just kind of go from there. So off the top of my head, one of the things I did want to mention about this movie is the additional artwork that was done by artist Matt Ferguson. And if you've heard me talk about Matt Ferguson before, he did a variety of art for the Transformers the movie 4K release, both for Shout Factory and for Zavi. And for him to be able to do artwork for Transformers 1, I found to be incredibly thematic and very cool. I think, you know, and I should have mentioned this earlier in the episode also, I am going to make a lot of comparisons and parallels between Transformers 1 and Transformers the movie, because I do feel that they are genuinely and sincerely of a kind. And I feel the influence, if not the direct references, of which, ironically enough, there are very, very few, if even any direct ones that I can think of off the top of my head. But I really enjoyed the Matt Ferguson art for Transformers 1. I don't know. It's, you know, I'm just gonna ramble some more and share some more feelings. I do feel like it's a huge win for the franchise. You know, where this feels like the movie that is appropriate for the 40th anniversary. It's, you know, there's just so much fresh energy. It's reinvigorating. The animation is terrific. There's comedy, there's peril, there's depth. And I think audiences are going to be genuinely surprised by this movie. Like, I don't know what the general public is expecting this movie to be. I know I found it to be far more deep and have more depth and resonance than I was anticipating. But at a time where you've got Inside Out 2 making over $1 billion, does that mean that Transformers 1 is going to make $1 billion? I don't know, but like this really feels like, again, that it's something special and it's a surprise. I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by this. Just so much depth and richly realized characters. It's fun. It's funny, and it's that relationship and the friendship really between Orion and D16 that watching their evolution as they gradually become Optimus and Megatron. Man, Pax, I'm going through some stray notes that I have and just kind of thinking about it. But there were a number of times, and I should probably talk about the performances soon, because I feel like I'm kind of dancing around it a bit. But that friendship is the engine that makes it go. And I remember me personally that there were a number of times where like there's a lot of like genuine camaraderie between the two, between Orion and D. And like anytime D16 would react warmly to something that Orion would do that would be kind of like, mischievous or something to get them in trouble, I'd be like, I think I even said this out loud a number of times, but I'm like, oh man, because this story only ends one way, where these friends become bitter enemies. And the turn is completely believable and totally understandable in a way that I don't think I've seen represented in Transformers before. Now, we've seen a lot of Optimus Primes and we have seen a lot of Megatrons, but what we haven't necessarily seen is the perspective where you get to see a believable transition. And it's not like a Anakin Skywalker Revenge of the Sith type of thing, like, oh, I need power, oh, therefore I am now evil. It's like you believe every turn of the plot, and man, it just it makes my heart ache, and it kind of makes my throat clench a little bit, because Brian Tyree Henry's performance as D and then later Megatron is just goddamn. I have been a fan of that dude since Atlanta, and everything he's popped up in since. He brings a special sauce, a certain magnetism to every role that he's in. Now, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but one of the signature vocal affects that Brian Tyree Henry does, and I've seen him do this with a number of different characters, is he does the full mouth heavy sigh of pushing out air, where it just I've never heard another actor do an exasperated sigh like Brian Tyree Henry does. He did it in Atlanta. He does it in Spider-Verse, and his character in Bullet Train does it as well. And it's like one of those things to where it's just so distinctive. And I was really hoping at one point that D16 or Megatron would do one of those signature sighs, but that's probably when you start talking about the exhalation of air and breath, maybe it raises too many questions about the nature of robots. But yeah, I mean, again, it's fun. It's emotionally touching. Has a throwback texture to it. While the animation is still fun and fresh. Terrific fight scenes, terrific animation, and more than anything, this movie just it gets it. It understands the Transformers. It understands who the characters are. It understands the world, and again, it pulls from so many different iterations and somehow consolidates them into like a, you know, this might be a swear word in the fandom, but it hammers everything out into where it's a singularly evergreen type of experience, where it's like we as fans could pick up, that's where you got that from. Oh, there's a little bit of Beast Machines in there. There's a little bit of Transformers Prime in there. There's obviously a heap and helping of G1 in there. There's very much an emphasis on the comics and the UK comics, and it takes all of those and not necessarily like a blender, but more like a melting pot. Like it's a fondue of all these different Transformers cheeses that melts and blends together in a way that is nothing short of spectacular. It is a tightrope walk that I don't know any other piece of media has been able to pull off prior to this one. So, like I had said earlier, I do want to talk about the performances, because that was something that I definitely skipped over and intentionally omitted from my reaction podcast, and I thought it would be more appropriate to talk about it here. Because like I think as I talk about the voice performances and the casting, I think that's where some of those spoilers are going to creep in. So again, from this point forward, spoilers for Transformers 1. I almost said Transformers the movie, LOL. But no, it's like, so yeah, so this will be yet another signpost of spoiler warnings. So I'm going to talk about the actors, I'm going to talk about the characters, and then in a bit I'll talk about the director, Josh Cooley. But yeah, for goodness sakes, spoilers alerts. Okay, all right, we'll do the classic tfu.info spoiler countdown, where we'll go 3, 2, 1. Okay, no more further warnings. Optimus Prime dies. Oh no. All right, well, actually, he kind of does, actually, but that is not the spoiler I thought it was. But no, up top, Chris Hemsworth, Thor himself, George Kirk himself, stepping into the role of Orion Pax, later Optimus Prime. I wasn't sure about the casting at first. It felt very gimmicky and very easy, but I like what he's doing with the performance. There is definitely a lighter texture to Orion, and you can feel as you watch the movie, as the character develops and grows, it becomes more straight ahead Chris Hemsworth, and then by the end, we're dipping into the Peter Cullen homage type of texture, which I feel like he splits the difference really quite well, because it feels like it's truly a homage and not an imitation. It's not like another actor that's in this movie, where they're doing a literal impersonation. And it doesn't feel like it's somebody from TikTok just trying to do an imitation. that kind of thing. It is very much its own thing, and it has its own conscious choices. I really like the performance, and there's several line deliveries that are kind of meant to be subversive. Like, it's in the trailers, but like when Orion delivers like the transform and roll out, there's an uncertainty to it that I like. He doesn't give a full-throated Peter Cullen, Autobots transform and roll out. He might at the end of the movie. I don't remember, but regardless, I like what he's doing with the voice. And as these movies continue into Transformers 2 and Transformers 3, which I would hope that that's the sequel naming convention. But anyway, I dig the performance, and I don't really have much more to say about it than that. Because I think at this point, he's done other voice work. You could tell that it's not his first best strength, but that doesn't mean that he's specifically the wrong choice or a poor choice for that. As I mentioned, Brian Tyree Henry as D16, later Megatron. I feel for me that is the strength of the movie, and certainly the movie's beating heart. It really kind of feels like, in a way, that D16 is kind of the audience point of view character. Because where we meet these guys, Orion is a bit of a history buff, which I love. I like that they've kind of retained that characterization from animated a little bit. But he's also a little more mischievous and a little more of a scamp than we've seen him. Usually, Orion Pax is naive, youthful, kind of a dum-dum. Like, Orion Pax working on the dock, kind of a knucklehead. But then other iterations we've seen where he's, it's like a stiff data clerk or a stiff law enforcement cop type character. This take on Orion, I was going to say, kind of takes bits of that, but the thing that it doesn't have is that he doesn't have a stick up his ass, which I think a lot of latter day Orion Paxes is what we've seen. Like, I don't know, there's almost a hot rod tendency to him, and I've said in many shows before that, why do you need to have that kind of story arc for Optimus when you have the Hot Rod Rodimus arc? I don't think that statement flies in the face of that, but it was just something I landed on, to where it's like, there is an impulsiveness, an impetuousness, a youthfulness, and an appetite for fun that we don't necessarily get to see from an Orion Pax. And I think because of his destiny as Optimus Prime, where he becomes, Space Dad Mega Jesus, I think having him start from a lighter standpoint is perhaps more appropriate for a more satisfying character arc. So again, Brian Tyree Henry, the beating heart and the soul of this movie. My heart aches and my stomach sinks when I think about the D16 Megatron arc, because we've seen Megatron early Megatron is like a gladiator, a revolutionary, always like as a change agent, an engine of change. And when we meet D16, he's the opposite. He is a symbol of conformity. He likes rules. It's like, in a weird way, he's kind of taken on a lot of those Orion Pax characterizations that I've just talked about. But he's a hard worker, and he takes pride in his work and isn't afraid of hard work, which I love that latter day Megatrons are kind of from a blue collar background. Especially here where we're going straight from the IDW comics and he's literally a miner. And I think that's a terrific starting point, but I was kind of taken aback by how stiff D16 is. But again, it also speaks to where his character arc goes. But again, there is some magic in Brian Tyree Henry's performance because it also kind of has the same youth energy that Chris Hemsworth brings to it. But when the turn happens, not only does he sell it and you believe it, but also your heart breaks because it's, we've seen Megatron go from an evil despot to a softened good guy. It's kind of refreshing in a weird kind of way to take it all the way back to the old school and see that arc in reverse. Like I love Earthspark Megatron. I think that is a really cool concept and kind of postmodern interpretation of the character. But this reminds you that that Megatron is a bad dude, and here you understand why. And I know it's harder to I don't know. It is occasionally frustrating now to where like every villain needs to be humanized. Like, Thanos was right, or like, turns out, Loki is just like a lovable scamp. That kind of thing. Why can't we just let our bad guys be bad guys? I feel like D16 has kind of like a different thing when he transitions into Megatron. It's like it's real a real turn to darkness and a fall from grace, and it's it's kind of Darth Vader type of stuff where it's like you're supposed to feel bad for this guy. And I do feel bad for this guy, but that doesn't make him not a villain, and it doesn't make him not a badass villain. So I will be interested to see where the trajectory of the future of this franchise goes. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the performance, and I like the authenticity and sincerity and warmth to it. Scarlett Johansson does a serviceable turn as Alita. I don't remember if she goes from just Alita to Alita 1 after she gets the cog later in the movie. I don't remember how that transition works. The performance is fine. It's a very Scarlett Johansson performance, and I do like the texture that she brings to the role. I've seen takes that the Alita character is a little undercooked, and I don't think I agree with that. Obviously, much like everyone else who is a citizen of the fandom is eagerly awaiting what Lita's perspective on this iteration of Alita 1 is. But as I was watching it, I'm like, oh shoot, Lita's really going to dig this version, because I really like this interpretation of the character because it is different than other Alita ones we've seen. I like that she's not handcuffed to Optimus in a romantic relationship. Various Alitas have had, all up and down the gamut of her attachment to Optimus. And while the movie kind of ends with, perhaps kind of like something that might become something, but she's not coded as Orion's girlfriend from Jump like Ariel was back in War Dawn. Alita is already kind of like, she has her own agency. You know, she's she's a boss. She has authority, and I'm sure that'll make any number of chuds all pissy. It's like, oh well, she's just a mouthy girl boss, which I don't know. I like that texture, and I like that she is a foil for these three knucklehead characters, these three dumb boys, that she's shown to be competent and can think on her feet and be decisive and take action in a way that the trio of Orion, D, and later B, B-127, when they go on their quest, she wants to be in charge of the map because she knows where she's going, that kind of thing. But you need somebody to kind of be that in that kind of Becky Thatcher role, to kind of keep kind of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn in line. And I feel like that's how this version of Alita 1 is coded. It's like, anytime those two are around, it causes trouble for her. And I don't have a problem with that interpretation. And I like that Alita has agency on her own and isn't just Orion's girlfriend. But I will also say, though, that even before she gets the transformation cog and kind of powers up a little bit, already an incredible badass. It's like there's a fluidity to the way that Alita 1 moves. Just even as she walks, there's a smoothness to it. It reminds me of the way that RC is depicted in Rise of the Beast, where it's like, she's a motorcycle, but she does like a lot of like, flips. And Alita does a lot of that. There's a lot of like the way the animation is on specifically how her legs swing around, like how she like steps over boxes and moves around obstacles. She moves completely differently than any other character in this movie and is very visually unique. And when I was talking about like the depth of the pigment in the paint earlier, I was thinking specifically of Alita and a number of things, because like the particular shade of pink and the depth of the glitter in the clear coat of her paint is like something I've never really seen before in animation. It's pretty spectacular. But I mean, and we saw a lot of this in the trailer, but the trailers don't show completely how capable Alita 1 is in combat. Like I was cheering, like anytime there's like a flip from vehicle mode into robot mode, and kicking up rifles into her hands, and again there's like I'll be interested to see how I react to this, seeing it a second time, but I swear there are times where her like waist is like spinning all the way around or something. There's something weirdly unnatural to her way of moving. I think like even like, arms and legs spin around opposite joint. I'll really have to look for that, because I don't know if that's just how I'm remembering it or how I saw it. But regardless, there was a light fluidness to it, a gracefulness, almost kind of like a dancer ballerina type of thing. But I wanted to play this audio clip for you. This is from the official Transformers Twitter account, where Scarlett Johansson describes why Transformers 1 is the perfect family movie.
It was so exciting to be a part of this Transformers film. Come on. I loved the script. It like ignites the kid in me. And so I think parents would appreciate that, but it's also just really fun.
Yes!
The new generation's gonna get to experience Transformers in a whole new way. That's what I'm talking about! It's gonna be awesome.
And rounding out the primary cast, of course, is Keegan-Michael Key as B-127, later Bumblebee, or is he named Bumblebee in the movie? I don't remember. But it's a fun take. You know, when we meet B-127, he's kind of running this garbage collecting type of thing. He's been by himself for an incredibly long time. He's made some of his own friends, and he's clearly gone a little stir crazy. But like in the trailers, I found the performance to be incredibly grating. In fact, I have said before that I think Keegan-Michael Key needs to be put into movie jail for a while. And anybody who saw Wonka would probably agree with me on that. I think he swings too hard and too high sometimes. But this performance, when taken in context of the movie, is a lot of fun. And it kind of, at a time where latter-day iterations of Bumblebee have been marked by whether he can speak or not, I like that this is the Deadpool to the X-Men Origins Wolverine version of the character. It's fun and adds a lot of levity and comic relief that this dude is just basically a motor mouth. And much to the consternation of Alita specifically.
Let's go!
She's joining us?
Fantastic. Hi there, Alita, right? Am I saying that right? Wanted to formally introduce myself. I'm B-127. You need me in the face earlier, back there. You can call me B, or Badassatron. It's a nickname some of the guys gave me. I don't know. I didn't give it to myself or anything. Actually, it's pronounced
Badassatron.
in case you were wondering.
Badassatron.
You like that, right?
Badass.
I'm gonna need you to talk less.
But you could also tell that it kind of grinds the gears of the other characters as well. The fun moments from the trailer with, like, you know, the knife hands and things like that, those all play pretty well, as does the Badassatron line. It's like he that joke recurs way more than I would have expected, and it kind of wins me over. I don't feel as strongly opposed to it in the movie proper as I do in the trailers. I feel like maybe it's just a higher concentration of that performance, but it was it's a ton of fun, and I had a number of folks talking about that being the high point for them. That it's just it's fun and it's funny. And I had heard the Deadpool comparison a number of times. And I had never really thought about Bumblebee as a Deadpool-type character. But at a time where I'm delighting in the Transformers animated version of B, I could see where a mouthier version would be appealing to audiences. And I think that this is kind of a fun way to position this character for the future. Now, a couple other notable performances. Steve Buscemi shows up as Starscream, and it's interesting because, like, when you first meet him, he doesn't have a lot of presence or a lot of lines, but when he does and he speaks, it does have the impact. And my friend Apollo in particular was very excited anytime Starscream was on screen. But when he speaks, he's just kind of Steve Buscemi, which is fine. But the thing I was not anticipating is that they kind of change his voice. there is a confrontation with D16. Well, I mean, since I've already popped the spoiler tent, basically Starscream's voice gets screechy and more high pitched because Megatron basically strangles him, and then that's what kind of messes up his voice, which I thought was an interesting way to do that in a way that I didn't think that it needed to, but it sounds kind of cool. Like it feels kind of like, well, not exactly like Tom Kenny's performance in Transformers Animated, where we're kind of doing Chris Latta, but also not. And it's certainly not Frank Dodaro's more contemporary version of Starscream, which is very much informed and influenced by Chris Latta. This feels like Steve Buscemi just kind of maybe pitched up a little bit, but it has kind of like that sneakiness and smarminess that you want. And they do something with the Decepticons here in Transformers 1 that I was not actually anticipating. It was they're positioned as the High Guard, not the Elite Guard. That's somebody else entirely, I guess. But like basically they've been exiled by presumably by Sentinel Prime, who is now basically running things. And we'll talk more about that in just a minute. But I was kind of thrown off a little bit where you find this gang who would later become the Decepticons, and they're just like these former High Guard folks. They're mostly Seekers. I would imagine that everybody's favorite Seeker shows up. I mean, because like I think in the background there's every possible color combination of any Seeker who has existed, has not existed, and ever could exist. I did see a slipstream in there. In fact, I saw a couple different slipstreams where I'm like, wait a second, is that one that I saw, was that slipstream or is this slipstream? You know, that kind of thing. And much like Cyberverse, there are a few different body types. You've got Coneheads in there as well. So it's not just the same Seeker body types over and over, which I thought was pretty interesting there. But yeah, so basically like these High Guard folks, which includes Starscreams, Seekers.
Look, that's Starscream, and you're Shockwave and Soundwave.
Enough.
Gosh, raise your hand if Wave is in your name. There's a lot of Wave.
And they're just kind of living out in the wasteland, apparently. And like I said, I thought that was just kind of like a interesting, weird place to start these characters. But then the future Autobots come across them, and this is where you get to see D16 start to turn a bit. And in fact, one of the one of the more iconic scenes in the entire movie is when he's grappling with Starscream and basically through his anger manifests his fusion cannon. Like, I mean, that was a jaw-dropping moment for me, where it's like, you know, he's just like so mad that a gun pops out of his arm. And he's D16 is as surprised as we are. It was an incredibly potent scene. Really, really like that. So Steve Buscemi does some serviceable Starscream, and it's totally fine. I guess I don't really have a whole lot more to say about it, because like I said, it is a very small role, and it's interesting watching the credits. Oh man, I should have said this like an hour ago. Stay through the credits. Not only is there a mid-credit scene that pays off some jokes earlier in the movie, but then there is a post-credit scene that you cannot miss. In fact, it has stuff from the trailers to where I was spending the whole movie like, okay, he has to say the thing. He has not said the thing yet. That kind of thing. So, I mean, shit. Again, I'm in spoilers, so I'll just spoil it right now. It is the rise of the Decepticons. The rise of the Decepticons is at the end of the post-credit scene. You get the branding ceremony, as we just saw recently in Two Mikes Too Furious when we were talking about the Bridge Too Close, the season 2 finale, where the Constructicons are branded in a similar ceremony. But anyway, and you get the titular line,
Decepticons! Rise up!
from Brian Tyree Henry. Just that depth of that boom, carrying all of the hurt and betrayal that he carries with him as he forges on his new path when he says Decepticons rise up. It wouldn't have, I would have preferred transform and rise up, but it kind of didn't make any sense in that context. So it's fine. Also in the voice cast is Lawrence Fishburne as Alpha Trion, and I love this performance. It's a very small role, but it has that Morpheus quality and texture to it. So and he fulfills that role. Like, he basically explains the entire plot to Orion and D and B and Alita. And to one point I leaned over to Chandler. I'm like, Neo, you must listen. So it was pretty good there. But one of the things, and this has since been spoiled by toys. I don't think it has been at the time I did the reaction, but like, I literally gasped when Alpha Trion transformed and he's got himself a beast mode. He's like the super regal lion looking thing, which I thought was very, very cool. And it makes for a pretty cool fight later in the movie. I lost the thread when I was talking about the credits. The cast is very small. Like, and it's not because there are people doing multiple roles. There just aren't a whole lot of speaking parts in this movie. It's interesting how trim and concise the cast is. But last and certainly not least from the main cast is, of course, John Hamm, the Ham Man, as a Sentinel Prime. And this version of Sentinel, again, feels to be a consolidated version. Like, he's very much got animated colors with with a lot of blue and gold and that type of thing. But John Hamm, his performance is delightfully slippery, and it even kind of has some of that Townsend Coleman bravado that you want from a Sentinel Prime. But then later gets, after the turn, spoilers again, if you have not seen the movie, stop listening, where he goes what I think is fair to say the traditional Sentinel Prime route and is super evil. There is some of that stinging Leonard Nimoy menace in his voice from Dark of the Moon in there, that I think creeps in there as well. But yeah, I mean, there's I don't know, a shifty used car salesman perspective. Again, very much a Don Draper type of thing for the Ham Man here. It's kind of like a disingenuous sincerity, as I would kind of describe that performance. But really what it is come to find out, and again, all the points go to my dude Chandler, because he was sitting next to me, and this was early in the movie. I think this was about the the time of the race, like Iacon 500 or whatever they're calling it. I mean, they could have called it the Velocitron Speedia 500, but instead they called it something else. But I think it's like, very early on, and Chandler, my dude with his arms full, he's like, that's the bad guy. He's a bad guy. And I'm like, yep, pretty much, because there's something in that line delivery even early on before you realize that he has sold out his entire race and planet to the Quintessons and has been working with them, and double, triple spoilers, murders the 13 primes. And it is a twist that you see coming a mile and a half away. But then you realize who this movie is for. It's for kids. And it's okay for kids to kind of puzzle that through. It's okay for adults to puzzle that through. I still found it just as shocking when you find it out. Now, so in case I forget about it later, I do have a note on the Quintessons. I like the character design. I like that they're, kind of like this techno-organic biomechanical type of thing. And there is a part of it that I like that they don't look like traditional Quintessons fully. But there's also a part of me that is a little disappointed that we didn't get to see traditional Quintessons. I feel that is something definitely that they're saving for a sequel. In fact, that is probably going to be a punctuation to a trailer for Transformers 1, 2, or whatever they're going to call it, where it's like, you have the trailer and then, be Transformers 2 coming to theaters. And then you bring it back up and it's just the Quintesson judge and the face spins and it's like, innocent, or something like that. Like, I think one of the strengths of this movie is that it is concise, and I think adding stuff like Megatron being a gladiator, if you had brought in more traditional Quintessons, I think it would have pushed it past the 2-hour mark, and I think would have defeated the purpose of it being so approachable. So that's the main cast. Other folks that are in the cast, and I did not mention this when I did my reaction because it had not been announced yet. But look at John Bailey, the epic voice guy, still voicing Soundwave, and I like it. I mean, I like his take on Soundwave because it is granted a straight up impression of Frank Welker's Dr. Claw voice. But what I do like is that this movie puts it through the vocoder sound effect. So you do get a very traditional Soundwave. And I really appreciated that because I saw something recently. I think it was like on the Transformers Facebook, or maybe it was on their Twitter. It was one of their social medias where they've been doing like stop motion little shorts with toys, and they've been in varying degree of quality, but like one of them had Soundwave in it, and it's just the Dr. Claw voice unprocessed. And I remember that was one of the things that really bothered me about when they made the effort to get Frank Welker to come back to voice Soundwave in Revenge of the Fallen, but then just had him do the Dr. Claw voice and didn't bother to process it. It's like you don't even get half points for that, because that tells me that sure, you did the thing that was on paper, but you didn't understand what it is and why you're doing it. It's like, sure, well, the fans want Frank Welker. It's like, well, you can do a voice that's not Frank Welker, and as long as you run it through a vocoder and it sounds serviceable, that's still just as fine. I don't mind John Bailey, epic voice guy, as these impersonations, because the roles are always small. I like that he's still included in the franchise, but not as heavily as he was in Bumblebee. But I do like that he's included here, and that about rounds out the announced voice cast. Evan Michael Lee is also Jazz in the movie. And that's not a spoiler because he has announced it on Twitter. And again, both of those, Evan Michael Lee as Jazz and John Bailey as Soundwave, not announced at the time that I had seen that advanced screening. So I saw those names in the credits. I did not catch who voices Shockwave, and along with a couple of the other voices as well. RC speaks and has a brief cameo, but I think outside of that, I don't know if any of the other Autobots actually speak. Like I know Wheeljack shows up, but I don't think he speaks. Red Alert is shown playing a video game, and you've got a whole bunch of other Autobots. Like, you've got in fact, does Ironhide turn into Ironhide? Because like at the end of the movie, basically when it's revealed that Sentinel Prime has been removing the transformation cogs from new Transformers as they come online as a way to subjugate them to work in the mines, to mine for Energon, to pay off the Quintessons and pay off his debt for basically funding his coup and war effort, where he executes the 13 primes and takes control for himself. But basically, Sentinel owes the Quintessons, and that's what the whole thing is. And now that the Transformers are mining for Energon, that's why the planet is kind of essentially kind of dying. They're killing their own planet by mining the Energon, and it's not flowing. And the Cybertronians don't have transformation cogs. Just the chosen few, the elite in the upper crust. Again, so a lot of themes of class and classism in this movie that I think are pretty resonant. As well that I really like. But before I move on to some of the other stuff I wanted to mention, as I said, I didn't necessarily scribble down all of the cameos and Easter eggs. I'll let Screen Rant or Cinema Blend or Christ, even like Sabertron or whatever, somebody's going to have a explainer with all of the cameos. But as I mentioned in my reaction podcast, there was a lot of hushed murmuring and a lot of pointing at screens. And when Soundwave came on, I got a couple different elbow nudges from a few different directions. And that was fun. But, when you're looking for cameos and surprises, there's it's kind of hard to be genuinely surprised. I had talked about seeing so many Seekers and a few other of the Autobots that we had talked about. But the thing that made me DiCaprio, the DiCaprio meme where it's like, hey, that kind of thing. There are as many side swipes in this movie as there are Seekers. And I was loving it, and I was delighted. And the first time I saw a blue one, I thought it was my birthday. And it was so funny because there were so many people between Ashley Artley and Eileen and Whirl and Garrett and more. I'm sure at least a couple other folks that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head, but it was at least half a dozen people. They were like, hey, blue sideswipe. Hey, blue sideswipe. So Netflix deep cover, a.k.a. blue sideswipe, real. Not only is he in the background of Transformers 1, but he's in there a number of times. And that just that I can't even express how it made me feel, because like, Soundwave is obviously my favorite Transformers character, but like, I like so many of my friends, like, there are people that like, stand for Bisk and, or just like have their favorite obscure character. And I've never really had a favorite obscure character up until recently, when I realized that ground zero for my Sideswipe collection, I don't even like Sideswipe as a character, but that it's the convergence of a color scheme and a mold. I love that Siege Sideswipe mold so much. It's so fun to play with and to transform. It's a great desk fiddler, and the transformation of it reminds me of playing with Transformers when I was a kid, kind of unencumbered by kind of modern engineering. He's a terrific action figure. Great posing, great articulation, but also convincing transformation as well. It's like it's a wonderful toy. But the first one of that mold that I got is from the Netflix line, and he's Sideswipe, but he's called Deep Cover, and he's not actual Deep Cover. But he's blue, black, silver, and gray. And all of those are my favorite colors. And in that combination and ratio, it's like, if you had asked me to custom design a Transformer, that's probably what I would land on. It's like the blue is like a almost like a cobalt type of thing. Not quite indigo, not enough purple for indigo, but still it is a striking color scheme, and I will still stick my neck out and say that version, that Netflix version, is one of the very, very few toys of that Siege line that actually looks good, dare I say better, with the battle damage. Like, he's got like a couple blast points that are like smudgy black on his chest. He's got like some like, muddy, scuffy silver paint on his legs. But the thing that, and I've never seen another figure have battle damage like this, there is silver paint skimming across the front of his fender bumper, essentially, with giving the effect that basically like his blue paint is flaking off, exposing the silver underneath. It's just a gorgeous paint job and a really cool figure. That character is not in the movie, but just the fact that there's a blue Sideswipe, and I'm pretty sure I saw a green one as well. I just need a pink one to round out my Power Ranger squad. But anyway, like it made me so happy. I'm just like, blue Sideswipe real. And I suppose now is as good a time as any to say, like, we've gotten some pretty good toys from Transformers 1 so far. There are so many yet to come. Because like one of the things that many of us said coming out of the theater, it's like, that movie was great. Can't wait for the toys. We're going to get some good ass toys from this movie. And I thought that was very, very neat and very, very cool. Cause like, you get at least 3 different versions of most, well, no, you get 3 different versions of Orion and D16 respectively, because like you get like basic D16 and Orion packs, but then you get powered up versions after they get the transformation cogs, and then later you get the Optimus Prime and Megatron versions respectively. And I just as I'm just kind of like in stream of consciousness mode at this point, at no other point, even after Megatron fulfills his dark destiny and murders Sentinel Prime, tears that dude in half, by the way, when after he decides that he isn't looking out for Orion anymore, and that he's like, I'm tired of saving you, and lets him go and lets him drop. And that's when the Matrix of Leadership finds him and he becomes Optimus Prime. But like the disdain on Megatron when he realizes the Matrix has chosen him, and he's just like, you, and because like D16 Megatron's entire arc is based on betrayal and disaffection and shattered faith, betrayal of faith. It's like he believed in the system. He believed in Sentinel Prime. And at every turn, this freaking white guy, freaking Orion Pax over here, this golden boy who could do nothing wrong, of course he ends up with the Matrix. And I think that's, if not the killing of Sentinel and taking Megatronus's cog into his own to fully become Megatron, it was seeing the Matrix choose Orion and making him Optimus Prime that I think really set him over the edge, because he's just so indignant at that point. So from there, I did want to kind of talk about the development of this movie, and there were a few things that I'd actually kind of forgotten about through sands of time. And as I said a couple times already, I did want to kind of touch on director Josh Cooley, but so I have the Wikipedia up, and the thing that I had kind of forgotten is that this movie has been gestating for quite some time. Even going back to March of 2015, after the release of Transformers Age of Extinction, Paramount had asked Akiva Goldsman to set up a writer's room to create ideas for potential Transformers movies. I remember reading about this in the press at the time, but I had forgotten about it. According to Goldsman, the writing team would look at various Transformers media created by Hasbro for inspiration. If they found one that had interested them, they could submit a treatment, which would then be further developed by the whole team. And I remember that Robert Kirkman was part of this writer's room, and I wonder how much of this experience informed what would later become Skybound's comics. But regardless, one of the ideas that came out of that writer's room and those sessions was the working title of Transformers 1, and it would serve as an animated prequel focusing on the Autobot-Decepticon conflict that began on Cybertron. I don't know if the initial inspiration was to have it timed to the 40th anniversary or if it just kind of ended up that way. But again, what perfect timing, because this is the right movie for the right time. In August 2017, it was reported that an animated Transformers film was officially in the works following the release of Bumblebee. Lorenzo di Bonaventura discussed the animated film, clarifying that it is quote-unquote in the works and would tell the whole Cybertron mythology. In April of 2020, it was reported that former Pixar animated and filmmaker Josh Cooley had been hired to direct the film and was overseeing the script. Apparently, at one point, the title of the movie was Transformers: A New Generation, but then later at CinemaCon, the title was officially confirmed as Transformers 1, and it was stated that the plot would center around the origins of the Transformers and explore the events that led Optimus and Megatron to go from being brothers in arms to being enemies, and how that conflict forever changed the fate of Cybertron, the home planet of, you guessed it, the Transformers. So let's talk about Josh Cooley for a sec, the director of Transformers 1. I think a lot of us in the fandom had been saying for however many years, what if Pixar made a Transformers movie? What if there was a Transformers movie through the Pixar lens and with those sensibilities? We got that movie. Transformers 1 is that movie. And Josh Cooley is the one of the primary architects of that. Josh Cooley had been at Pixar since like 2003. He started as an intern, mostly working as a storyboard artist on The Incredibles, the first two Cars movies, Ratatouille, and Up. And that's already a pretty good pedigree. But it was in 2015 where Josh Cooley worked as a screenwriter and storyboard supervisor on Inside Out, which was obviously released to critical acclaim. Cooley received an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay for his work on the film. And based on the success of Inside Out, Josh Cooley was tapped by John Lasseter and Andrew Stanton to co-direct Toy Story 4. Now, John Lasseter ended up stepping away from that movie, and Josh Cooley is the sole director. Toy Story 4 was Josh Cooley's directorial debut. That movie, upon release, received critical acclaim, and for his troubles, Josh Cooley took home his first Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. And I like all of those movies. And so, like, you know, and I've learned that in my research for Transformers 1 here. I like that he's one of the architects of Inside Out. And I like Toy Story 4 quite a lot. It's interesting to me that the guy who gave the second terrific send-off for Woody, Buzz, and the gang would go back and tell the beginnings of the Transformers, because who didn't, you know, watching Toy Story in 1995 feel like, hey man, what if there was a movie like this but with all of our licensed heroes? What if it's like an Indian in the cupboard situation where you've got like licensed characters? But like, you know, even when I was a teenager, I had always dreamed about like, you know, a Toy Story-esque movie that featured Transformers and G.I. Joe. And I think it's interesting that now, all these years later, that Josh Cooley ends up being the guy to bring the first animated Transformers movie since the Transformers the movie in 1986. And again, he's an Academy Award winner for his trouble. And I like that connective tissue. But the thing that I've learned in my research is that one, this dude is 45 years old. Good Lord, same age as myself. So I don't know if that represents a path not taken. I'm not artistic in the animation department, but it is interesting as I reflect on my fandom of Transformers the movie and how that movie affects me and how Transformers 1 kind of affects me, that it comes from someone who presumably has similar experiences and sensibilities. But I found a article in Entertainment Weekly. This was actually published back in July, but I just found it very recently. Transformers 1 director reveals how the infamous 1986 animated movies influenced new prequel film. I take umbrage with the phrasing infamous, but you go, Entertainment Weekly. Skimming through parts of this article and others, basically, Josh Cooley wanted to capture a quote-unquote epic quality and grand scale for the film, and used the Transformers the movie from 1986 and Dune, the David Lynch Dune, not the new one, as points of references, as there are no human characters in Transformers 1 as they are in previous films in the franchise. Cooley and his team aimed to inject more comedy and humanity into the Transformers themselves. They wanted to make sure that the characters had enough humor and emotion to carry the story on their own. The film depicts how the Transformers gained their ability to transform, an idea Cooley found appealing. He felt that there was fun in seeing the characters learn and adapt to their new powers. The relationship between Optimus Prime and Megatron and the tragedy of their falling out is the emotional core of the film. For Cooley, it was important to show that Megatron was not just a villain. He wanted people who had no knowledge of Transformers to come into the film and not be able to immediately pick up who was who and what was going on. He took inspiration from several famous brothers turned enemy stories from across pop culture when crafting the arc. An original idea for the film was to depict Megatron as a gladiator and have him and Optimus Prime come from different backgrounds. Due to runtime constraints, that idea was scrapped in favor of having the two be bunkmates working as miners instead. But of Transformers the movie, director Josh Cooley said in this Entertainment Weekly article, he will never forget the first time he saw it. Quote, "That one scarred me and a whole generation." Cooley says the trauma of that shocking death heavily influenced him as he made his new Transformers movie, the first animated movie in the franchise since the 1986 film, and he has no plans to scar a new generation of fans, obviously referring to the death of Optimus Prime and so many other beloved characters as well. Now, in addition to making sure he didn't traumatize another era of young Transformers fans, Cooley also wanted to make sure Transformers 1 boasted a voice cast just as impressive as the one in the 1986 movie. Quote, "There's some amazing voice work done on that movie," the director said. That was one thing I'm still blown away by, that they got Orson Welles to voice a character in that film for his last performance too. So I knew that we needed to have some heavyweight cast in this film as well. Cooley assembled his own mini Marvel team up with a voice cast, including 2 Avengers, including Chris Hemsworth and Scarlett Johansson, and Eternals alum Brian Tyree Henry as well. Quote, "It's not intentional," the director admits with a laugh. "All of them just nailed it. Joining them to voice these characters are who are more than meets the eye are Keegan-Michael Key as B-127, a.k.a. Bumblebee, John Hamm as Sentinel Prime, Lawrence Fishburne as Alpha Trion, and as of this writing back in July, and Steve Buscemi as a mysteriously unidentified villain that we would all know is definitely Starscream. Cooley says the relationship between Orion Pax and D16, quote, "is the core of the film, and he wants fans to understand the heartbreak of what causes D16 to ultimately become a ruthless villain obsessed with power. The thing that starts to drive a wedge between him and Orion is that the world is not what they thought it was, and they start to form 2 different points of view on how to solve the problem," he explains. And these 2 versions just naturally butt heads against each other. They're really trying not to get pulled apart, and that's where the friction comes in during the second part of the movie, where things get real and scary choices are made that really affect everything. Cooley drew inspiration from many other beloved brothers-turned-enemies story from all across pop culture while crafting Orion Pax and D16's ultimately tragic arc. Quote, "I thought about X-Men's Professor X and Magneto, Spartacus, Ben-Hur, and the 10 Commandments," he says. "I was going to real deep epic ideas because when I originally thought of this, it felt like a Cain and Abel story getting down to the basics of good versus evil." Fans already know where the story is heading, but Cooley teases the way that they get there will be powerful. Quote, "They eventually become enemies, and people know that. That's what's engaging about it, letting the audience fall in love with them, knowing that they're going to break up, hopefully without causing lifelong trauma this time." That from Entertainment Weekly. And I couldn't help but, and I don't know how much of this is projection, but I couldn't help but think of the parallels between Transformers 1 and Transformers the movie. Not even specifically in theme or in motion or really much of anything other than vibes. It's difficult for me to explain it, but it's a PG-13 movie that's unabashedly so. I had a conversation with Jason, one of the organizers for Seibert Northwest, and he has a young daughter who I believe is under the age of 6, if I remember correctly. And I remember when we were discussing the first trailer where Keegan-Michael Key's B-127 talks about his alter ego, Badassatron. And him just not having it and saying the swearing is just so unnecessary. I don't I don't understand. And really for him, the swearing was kind of like his kind of go, no go. He's not taking the kid to it. And it's, and there were other aspects as well. The violence and themes are a little more intense, but that's where I think these two movies are kind of soulmates in a way, in that I think what sticks out to a lot of us who were under the age of 10 when Transformers the movie came out in 1986 is that it was kind of our first taste of more mature storytelling with characters that we knew and were familiar with. For some folks, that was probably even the first time they had heard swear words. You know, you've got a, oh shit, what do we do now? You've got a open, damn it, open. And Badassatron, now granted, you get like 5 bites at that apple, but that is the only swear word in there. I don't think anybody says damn, and certainly nobody says shit. But contrast that with your Marvel movies, they're PG-13, and kids are just getting dragged to these all the time. And it's always like shit. And even to the point where I'm just like, who are these movies for? I mean, are they for me? But I look around and see the number of kids there. I have not had the opportunity to see this in a screening with kids. I saw it with folks that are fans and that are older fans and more adult fans. But the thing that appeals to me about this movie is that it's got teeth, but it's not scary. Or it's like it's scary in the right way. Like the quintessons are slippery and scary and creepy. And it doesn't skimp on the violence where and I don't know if this is I'll be interested to see what it's like on a rewatch, but Sentinel Prime is explicitly murdered by Megatron. He is torn in half and bisected. What I don't remember is how much of it you see. I do remember that you see his top half tossed aside and you see like the light go out of his eyes, and I swear he turns gray as well, but like he is dead. But what I don't remember is I don't think it's like a Deadpool 2 situation where Juggernaut like tears the dude in half. I don't think it's even a 2007 poor Jazz getting ripped in half like I Want To. I don't think it's any of that. But it is intense and it is graphic. And I think that is in keeping with some of the more mature sensibilities that was there in Transformers the movie. And I think they're doing kind of like the same model as Transformers the movie, because with a PG rating, you get in more theaters and you get later showtimes in a way that a G-rated movie doesn't. I think that is still the same today as it was then. And you have the hook of celebrity voice casting. And I believe that Transformers the movie was the first movie to advertise it. Not the first animated movie to have celebrity voice casting, because I think Disney was doing that like even like in the 30s and stuff. Or maybe like the 50s and 60s. But like I think like the people that voiced those characters were actors of the day, but they weren't on the poster. They weren't in the trailers the way they are now. And you can trace that lineage straight back to Transformers the movie in 1986. So it has that more mature positioning than I think folks are giving credence to for Transformers 1. Because like you look at the trailers and it's like, it's just a kid's movie, that kind of thing. And it is a kid's movie, but it's more also. You might even say it's more than meets the eye. It goes hard at times. The storytelling is solid. The voice acting is terrific, and the visuals are incredible. And again, it gets so much of the Transformers story right. There's the emotional depth, character development, and tons of laughs. It honors the legacy of Transformers, its characters, but then also blazes its own path forward as well. Now, I came across this this tweet with Industrial Light and Magic creative director and animation supervisor Rob Coleman discusses Transformers 1, and this speaks to the animation aesthetic a little bit.
Josh, in terms of the style of animation, he wanted it to be handcrafted. He wanted to look what we call keyframe animation. It's not driven by motion capture, meaning Josh never wanted to look like it was driven by someone in a robot suit. But he always wanted the characters to feel alive, that they were thinking and they were emoting. So it's a human story, but done with robots. And we spent a great deal of time in the early development working on the eyes. They're mechanical. They're more like camera lenses. They've got little shutters, and they move, and they've got little doors that open and close that give us more expression in the eyes. That was all done on purpose because our human eyes are so expressive, and we can tell just by looking at someone's face and how they're feeling. And that's what Josh wanted on this.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I'm really excited to see it in IMAX and 3D IMAX, hopefully at the Pacific Science Center, because you spend so much time watching the eyes. There's so much there, and when you get to the final motion of the movie and Megatron's eyes bleed red. That transformation is complete. It's really very cool. And there's even some kind of kind of like Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader stuff where it's the eyes start off as yellow on D16, but there are times the more angry and empowered he becomes, there's an orange tinge to it. It's some really cool visual language, and what could be thought of as just kind of disposable children's fare turns out to be stunningly animated, surprisingly emotional and visceral, and it's a movie again about the power of belief and about faith and what happens when that belief in faith is shaken and betrayed. But it's also, again, full of high octane action. It's emotionally deep. There's all the themes of friendship and layers of social hierarchy and class structure, and it really is, while clean and approachable, also shockingly deep for a kids movie, as it tells this new consolidated origin story for the Transformers, while pulling on stuff from the past while blazing its own path in the future. I want to close out the podcast here with a tweet from Josh Cooley himself. His profile picture on Twitter is him wearing wearing sunglasses and an Alf t-shirt, and probably looking about 10 years old, maybe 7 to 10 years old. And he wrote this, he wrote this back in July. But in this tweet, he writes, quote, "Hey, little nerd in my profile picture, what if I told you someday you'll create a new Transformers continuity that begins earlier than anything you've seen on the Transformers lore timeline with the greatest crew and cast ever assembled?" The response, "Can I have an otter pop?" Which, of course, is how any of us would respond. But I saw that tweet, and it just it really resonated and stuck with me. So I wrote on my Twitter, "I am so happy for the little guy in the profile picture. Thank you, Josh, for giving us the Transformers movie that is finally worthy of making kids feel the same way in movie theaters as I did back in 1986. Transformers 1 is the real deal. And I'm sure there is plenty more I can say, but you can hear it and I can hear it too. I'm doing a lot of like repeating myself and rambling. I feel like I will have a lot more to say about this movie after I see it again. And again, I keep talking about the 3D IMAX. This is what I was looking for. Sorry, you can't see me on the audio podcast scrolling through my Twitter, scrolling for a tweet. But back on August 26th, Josh Cooley also posted. I have to say this movie was made for the big screen. You want to feel like you're on Cybertron. I highly recommend the 3D IMAX version. It blew my mind. They did a phenomenal job. So that's part of the reason why I'm especially excited to see it at the Pacific Science Center here in Seattle, because it seems to be a recommended format. Directors don't always recommend 3D conversions. And so I will go check it out and I will report back. But I think that will do it for this episode of Mike Seibert Radio. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and listening, and for being my friend. And if you want more of this, if you want more Mike Seibert Radio, make sure and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And for even more Transformers content, check out our other show, Two Mikes, Two Furious Animated Transformers, where me and Michael Andrews review Transformers Animated one episode at a time. We just wrapped up season 2. Stay tuned for the announcement of our mailbag live stream coming up in the near future. Until then, like, share, rate, and review the show. Let us know what you like and what you'd like to hear more of in the future. My name is Mike. This has been Mike Seibert Radio. And until next time, you have the touch. You have the power. Till all are one. Make good choices. Mike Seibert Radio is recorded in Seattle, Washington. Our original theme song is written and performed by Lucia Fasano. Get her music on all streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, and check out her Instagram at Lucia_Fasano. Our closing theme is a nice place to visit by these young fools, used with permission from Michael Geissler. Check out Michael's website, bytormusic.com, for more music like it. And special thanks to Andy Lita for our logos and graphic design. He is at GoGoAndyRobo out on Twitter. Become a Mike Cybertronian and join the MSRP Friends and Fans Facebook group. And you can follow me on social media at Mike Seibert Radio on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And check out my YouTube channel for even more videos, and subscribe so you never miss a show. Want to be a guest on the show? Send me an email, MikeSeibertRadio@gmail.com. Shoot, I knew that I had forgotten something, and I had forgotten something big. You always forget something as soon as you hit stop recording, right? In this case, with Transformers 1, I had forgotten like one huge thing about my dude Soundwave. He uses his telepathy. I mean, when was the last time we saw Soundwave use telepathy? And it's pretty cool, actually, because it's got like the like Aquaman rings coming out of it. It's like ooh 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 ooh. That just really tickled me, and I like that they dug out like some like real obscure deep lore that folks don't often think of. But in doing that, I saw a tweet from John Bailey, the epic voice guy who voices Soundwave, and he posted about the cast of the Transformers at one of the Paramount premieres and creator screenings, and he's in a picture in a post with Evan Michael Lee, who is the voice of Jazz, The voice of Skywarp was actually Josh Cooley himself. I think he has one line. I think he's the guy in the background that's like, transform and roll out. What? and then Alita's like, louder, transform and roll out. Anyway, Josh Cooley is Skywarp back there. You also have Isaac Singleton Jr. as Darkwing and Jason Canopisos Alvarez as Shockwave. And in this tweet, John Bailey also said, and we all did background voices as well. Transformers 1 is in theaters next week, ! So I thought that was pretty cool. And I think maybe with that, aside from the voice of RC, that's probably everybody in the voice cast. Because like I said in the original recording, there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of background characters, but I don't think any of them actually speak. One last big thing, you probably heard this way earlier in the episode when I said something about like, well, there's really no, there's a lot of like, spiritual connectivity to Transformers the movie with Transformers 1, but there's no outright references. And that's still the case. Nobody says one shall stand, one shall fall. There is the cheeky reference that I put in the close about having the touch and the power, which killed in our screening, advanced screening, and our audience. Everyone picked up on that, obviously. But the thing that it's right there. It's amazing what happens when you sleep on something after you record. But the biggest, hugest thing that I feel like they did exactly for me, and it was something that I feel they did for me, but also it was, I don't know, your mileage might vary, but it might be a bit of a groaner as well. Optimus Prime does the jump, and if you know what the jump is, it's from Transformers the movie. It's like, you got the touch, you got the power. Optimus Prime mows through all the Decepticons, and he's about to, on his way for his final duel with Megatron. And basically, in truck mode, he blasts up into the air, transforms, and does like this sick, specific pose where he twists his waist and kicks up a knee and throws a shoulder back. It is probably the iconic Optimus Prime pose, and much like how every Shockwave figure has to do the All Are Dead pose from that iconic cover from Transformers number 5, every Optimus Prime action figures has to do the jump. But anyway, it's like it was one of those things where it did get a big cheer moment, but I was like, they didn't have to do that, but I'm glad that they did. And I look at it, and I'm just now landing on this as I'm talking to you now. Transformers the movie and Transformers 1 are movies about beginnings and endings. And think about it from this perspective before you groan. I'm telling myself this as I get ready to go watch it for a second time. When Optimus Prime emerges in that jump pose, it's his first battle with Megatron. It is the first time that Optimus Prime and Megatron in their current forms face off. Conversely, when Optimus Prime does the jump in Transformers the movie, it is the last time that they will face off in their climactic duel, at least in that continuity for that moment in time. But don't let 40 years of continuity interfere with a good theme. But I just put that together. One, that Optimus Prime does indeed do the jump, but also that it's actually kind of cool because it's the beginning. So that's it. I'll leave you there with that. I thought about a million other things that I forgot to put in the recording, but this episode is already at least 10 minutes longer than the movie, so I'm going to leave it here, and hopefully I'll do a live stream and do more stuff. In the meantime, if there's what are your favorite Easter eggs or things that you want to ask me about, hit me up on all of my social platforms. I'm at Mike Seibert Radio, and I would love to field those questions. And I can't wait to see Blue Sideswipe again in IMAX 3D. Take care.